Are you on the critical path right now? Today we will learn what this concept from project management is all about and why it can also apply to our day-to-day lives. Welcome to the Soft Skill channel. My name is Sebastian Jung and today I'd like to present to you the critical path. The critical path is a concept from project management. There you will encounter the critical path method or critical path analysis. Serious business, so I brought a tie. Well, somewhat half-baked, I have to admit. Wearing the color like this is not actually okay, and basically if you wear a tie you're not supposed to take off your jacket, but I guess it's alright because we won't delve into project management in detail today. We won't discuss details, terminology and so on. I just want to explain what the critical path is all about because I think it is a concept that is actually useful also in our day-to-day lives. For example, if I have to plan to organize anything, a big event like a wedding, maybe a family vacation, maybe if I move to a different city, something like this, a big private project of any kind, then it can be useful. So, what is a critical path actually? The critical path is the way from the beginning to the end, from the start of the project to the successful closure. The critical path consists of activities that are mandatory for the successful fulfillment of the project and that usually have some dependencies. If there is any delay within the critical path, this will always lead to the end of the project being postponed. Well, that all sounds rather complicated and bureaucratic, so we will have a look at a very simple example. I just noticed that I am really hungry and I have a strong craving for a nice Italian pasta dish. I have a nice recipe in mind. Oh, but there is one problem. I don't have the ingredients at home, so I will need to go shopping. I will need to head to the next supermarket first. So, the first step in my project of getting some nice pasta is to go shopping, to go to the supermarket. I think it will take about 30 minutes. I can start right away. There are no dependencies. Nothing else has to be done first. I can leave right away, right at the beginning of the project. I have a simple visualization right here. This is obviously not any proper project diagram. It's a really simple timeline visualization. So after going to the supermarket, the next step is to prepare a nice pasta sauce. As I said, I have a nice recipe in mind. It takes about 20 minutes. And it can start as soon as I've returned from the supermarket, as soon as the ingredients are here. So I have 30 minutes of shopping plus 20 minutes of cooking. That makes a total of 50 minutes. So after 50 minutes, I can finally eat. I am quite happy about that. But wait a moment. I forgot something. If I want to eat a nice pasta dish, it would be nice if it included any pasta. So I have to cook some noodles, I'm afraid. Let's say it takes about 10 minutes, including heating the water and everything. So an additional 10 minutes. Does that mean I have to wait an entire hour before I can finally eat? No worries. Let's have a closer look at that. Cooking the noodles is also dependent on the shopping. I cannot cook any noodles I haven't that aren't present. And cooking the noodles is also a prerequisite for the successful closure and fulfillment of the project, because it won't be much fun to eat this dish without any noodles. However, cooking the noodles is not dependent on cooking the sauce. I can start cooking the noodles right after I return from shopping, parallel to cooking the sauce. I can do both at the same time. This means cooking the noodles is not on the critical path. I can still eat after 50 minutes. I'm quite happy about that because I'm very hungry. And it also makes a lot of difference if there are any delays. Now, let's say while I am shopping, while I am in the supermarket, I get a call on my cell phone. Someone wants to talk to me about something. It takes 5 minutes. Therefore, I return from shopping 5 minutes later. I can only start cooking the sauce 5 minutes later. Sauce is finished 5 minutes later, and I can eat only 5 minutes later. The entire project takes 55 minutes instead of just 50. So the delay I have during shopping will postpone the successful end of my project. It will postpone my meal. That's not very nice. Now, let's consider the noodles. Let's say while I am preparing the noodles, I notice, oh damn, I actually forgot to turn on my electric kettle. It has been doing nothing for 5 minutes. There is a 5-minute delay. This doesn't make any difference because I have some time to spare anyway. I have some leeway in cooking the noodles. There is some buffer because cooking the noodles takes much less time than preparing the sauce. So a delay of 5 minutes while cooking the noodles will not postpone my meal, will not postpone my successful closure of the project. And this is also the reason why cooking the sauce is on the critical path and cooking the noodles is not, because basically cooking the sauce takes longer. So I don't have any buffer, any leeway here, but I have some in regard to cooking the noodles. Of course, in actual project management, all of this is a bit more complex. You distinguish between different kinds of buffers and between different kinds of dependencies, and everything is a bit more complex and you have specific terminology, but that doesn't need to concern us today. However, I would like to give you an example from the actual business world where the critical path was important. An example from software development, more specific from software testing. Because I was working in software testing for a couple of years as an IT consultant, and this is where I stumbled upon this concept of the critical path for the very first time. Because some time ago, in the earlier days of software development models worked like this. You had one step and you completely finished that step before you proceeded to the next step. So you finished development, you finished programming the software before you handed over the finished software to testing, and then you did testing as a totally independent final step at the very end of the project. Therefore, software testing was entirely on the critical path, and it took very long to finish a software development project. This is, of course, not desirable. So in more modern approaches to software development, it was always the goal, or it was always an important goal, to remove testing from the critical path as far as possible. And this was achieved by having testers perform as many testing activities as possible while development was still ongoing. So for example, all the preparations, writing test cases, analyzing specifications, all of that was already done while development was still ongoing. And you also didn't wait for the final version to start your testing, but you started testing on some preliminary versions and so on, always with the goal to have as little testing on the critical path as possible. And currently in our modern days, in agile methods of software development, development and testing are closely interwoven, and there is even less testing on the critical path. Just to give you an example of a situation in the actual business world where the critical path was and is important. As I said before, I believe this idea, this concept of the critical path can be helpful in our day-to-day lives because we get a better sense of sequence, of dependencies, of which activities are the most time-critical ones, where the critical path actually is, where we have a leeway and buffer and so on. I think this is helpful if we have, for example, to organize a big event like a wedding or whatever. However, there is one trap we need to avoid because we might come up with the idea that we could remove some activities from the critical path by performing multitasking. And this would be quite a stupid idea because, as most of you probably know, this impression of being very productive when we do multitasking is actually an illusion. In fact, we are slower and less productive when we multitask, and we are noticeably faster if we just do one activity after the other. So we shouldn't do that. Now, some of you might wonder, what about this cooking sauce and cooking noodles at the same time? There we have to distinguish a bit. There is more fluid transition. Those are activities that have the same goal. They are both very simple and they both have a lot of idle time, because if you cook the noodles, most of the time you are just standing there and you are stirring the pot from time to time, but there is a lot of waiting involved that you can use for the sauce and the other way around. So I wouldn't regard this as multitasking. For more details about multitasking, maybe you want to have a look at our video about the topic. I will link to it in the video description. By the way, if you click the like button now and subscribe to the channel while the video is still running, those activities won't be on the critical path. Wouldn't that be nice? At least I would be quite happy about it. We will see each other again next week. For today I take my leave. Have a nice day. See you next time.